Hello. Today I'm going to be demonstrating Datical's integration with Microsoft TFS. In this demonstration scenario, we'll be showing how Datical can be tightly integrated from a source code, build, and release management perspective from within TFS. Let's take a look at the high-level scenario that I'll be covering. I'm going to first use the Datical UI to create a new change to be deployed. After I create this change, I'm going to run a forecast and a rules processing engine to make sure that this change matches all the rules that I've set up in place. If this succeeds, I will then be pushing into my dev environment. Once I've successfully deployed to dev, then I'm going to check this new code change into source code management with TFS. After this, we'll then be using TFS to create a build job to, again, call out to Datical to status the database, run a forecast. If successful, we're going to actually deploy to our test environment as a part of the build automation. I then will publish these artifacts so they'll be available to tie in with TFS release, where again, I can call out to Datical to status the database, run a forecast, and ultimately deploy into my production environment. So this is the Datical UI, and my project is called Ultra Mortgage. I have a very simple pipeline. I'm going from dev to test to prod. Right now, all environments are showing up as green and fully deployed. So I'm now going to create a new change that I can start pushing throughout the pipeline. From within the tool, very simple to create a new package. I'm going to create a new column. I'm going to put this in my assets table, and let's just call this new item. Now when I'm creating this package, I need to give it a specific ID, and this is also going to map to the change set ID within TFS. I will create a label and assign it to it. Labels let us define what packages can be deployed into what environments or as a part of which releases. And I'll just add a comment to my code. Now that I've created a new package to be deployed, if I refresh my status, I can see that now I have undeployed changes within dev, test, and prod. So before I begin the deployment, I'm going to run a forecast into my dev environment. And again, forecast is going to make sure that logically this package will work in the intended environment, and also it's going to make sure that it passes any DBA rules that I've set up. When I run the forecast, I get a very detailed report. This shows that I did pass my forecast. It shows the changes I'm about to make, and it will show the specific SQL that will be executed on the endpoint. Now I'm going to deploy using Datical into my dev environment. Again, I generated a deployment report. Everything was successful, and I can see that I'm now fully deployed in dev. Now I'm ready to integrate with TFS. So I go over to my deployment plan, and I simply go to Team and check in pending changes. And I'm going to tell it an ID. This is my change set ID. I'm adding a column for new item. Now that we've checked this in with TFS, let's switch over to that tool. So from within TFS, I have defined my Ultra Mortgage project, and if I look at code, this is where I've integrated the Datical changes in with the TFS code management. So I can see my change log, which is a list of all my packages that are available to be deployed. I can see my reports, my rules, my resources. And I can also see the specific change sets that are ready to be deployed from within TFS. Switching over to build, I've defined a build job called build and deploy to test environment. And when I run this build, it's going to actually call out to Datical behind the scenes to status my database, to run that forecast that we saw earlier, and ultimately to run and deploy if my forecast succeeds. After a successful deploy into the test environment, it's going to publish these artifacts and make them available for release. So I'm going to start this build process, and while the build is running, you'll see all the steps on the left that we defined and their status reflected in the console window on the right. We have very detailed logging information that is created behind the scenes, so it's very easy to go back and look at any step along the way within your build to see specifically what did Datical do as a part of this build process, and what was the output. Once the deploy has completed, if we switch back to Datical and refresh our pipeline, now we'll see that we've been fully deployed into the test environment. Now that we've looked at code and build, let's finish up with release from within TFS. I also have created a release definition called release to prod. And with my release definition, again, I'm going to be calling out to Datical to status my database, to run a forecast, and to deploy into the production environment. Let's create a new release. This release is going to be based on the last successful build that happened from within TFS. Once the release is created, I simply need to deploy this release into my test environment. I can see which change sets are about to be deployed. So I've begun the release from within TFS. I can see that it's in progress. It's possible to look at the logs that are being generated during the release. And you can also look at the specific work items, configuration, artifacts that will be included within this release as well. Once this release has successfully concluded, we're going to go back into Datical and make sure that we did successfully release all the way into the prod environment. So if I switch back into Datical, now I can see that I'm fully deployed across dev, test, and production. This was done via a combination of using Datical within dev and then using TFS as part of the build to test environment and part of release management to prod. Thank you. If you have any questions, please reach out info@datical.com for more information.